The Dallas Cowboys are spending a ton of time scouting tight ends during this draft process. Which one could they take in the third or fourth round? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out at McCoolBCB. Landon, let's first start with this. How big of a need is the tight end position for the Cowboys going into the 2022 draft?
I mean, I think it's a pretty decent need. I mean, you obviously Jarwin is a situation where it's over, or you
He's
have
gone.
to at least to at least act like it's over until you hear otherwise. You certainly can't rely.
They've waived injured him, so
they've waived injured,
roster.
so he's not even on the roster at this point. So, even if you had hoped something had happened there, they're clearly moving on. Obviously, they have Schultz under the franchise tag. They've yet to sign a long-term deal there, but even if they decide to go the route of signing a long-term deal there, I still think that you need to draft and develop another tight end. I mean, this offense relies on tight ends for different aspects of it, and I think if you're talking about an offensive scheme that is based on sort of attempting to formation folks to death, right? Like it's a lot, show them a lot of different looks. You need tight ends and you need versatile ones, and I think right now they have a tight end room that they're, happy with, they're okay with, but you could certainly inject some talent. You certainly, the other thing about tight end that I would just point out here, I think that hangs over all of this and all of our conversation is that, to me, and just my opinion, tight end is by far the most difficult position to learn in the NFL. It is the hardest jump from college to the NFL, and I think that's the reason that you see specific schools like Stanford and some of these other ones consistently put out prospects, because they have a program that is close to a pro level program. They train these guys to train them up a lot. So I guess this is all a really big way of saying that usually what happens when you get a tight end coming in as a rookie, it's a rebuild project no matter who it is. Outside of the top end guys who you could probably use right away for mismatch skills, before they're ready to like truly take on a full tight end role, it's usually at least a season-long process before they're really comfortable with everything they have to do.
My next question for you is how sure are you that Dalton Schultz is on this team long term? Because we have heard nothing about a long-term contract extension. And even Stephen Jones today, he was asked about how that's going, and very non-committal. He said, we're going to look at the draft. I almost wonder if tagging Schultz is a 1 year kind of bridge. So they didn't lose Amari Cooper and Dalton Schultz and Cedric Wilson in all one offseason. It basically gives them time to kind of find his replacement.
I mean, I don't think that's an outrageous suggestion. I mean, I think that clearly the idea that you didn't want to lose Cooper and Schultz, I think that's absolutely true. Whether that means that they just wanted Schultz, as a bridge until they had the next thing in line,
time, right? Like,
yeah.
Now, if Schultz has an unbelievable year, they probably would franchise him again, or they could sign him to a long-term deal. But I don't think saying for sure that he's going to be on this team next year is a lock by any means.
No, absolutely. I would go the other way too in saying that I don't know that because he hasn't signed yet that he won't get signed. But I agree that I don't think it's a lock that he's going to be on the team beyond 2022, because we haven't signed a contract yet. They're clearly, I mean, from what we are hearing, targeting tight ends, which seems to indicate that they're churning the room a little bit. So I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility.
All right, so today we're going to take a look at 3 tight ends that we know the Cowboys have interest in. I believe all 3 are confirmed 30 visits for the Cowboys. They've gone and seen all these guys work out at their pro days. They saw a couple of these guys at the Senior Bowl. So these are 3 very legitimate Cowboy draft picks. two of which I'll be excited about. One, not so much. But let's start with the guy that we've actually talked about quite a bit on the show. And we don't need to spend a ton of time on him, but Jelani Woods from Virginia went to the Shrine Bowl, was fantastic there, went to the Combine, was incredible there, went to the Pro Day, tested as the best athlete ever at the tight end position. Again, we spent a lot of time on him, but just kind of quickly, what did you see in Jelani Woods?
Well, I think it tells you everything you need to know that he's a tight end. He wears number 0. Like that, it takes a special kind of a gumption and pizzazz to play this number 0 as a tight end. That's confidence in yourself. He's big, man. He's big,
massive.
He's 6'7", 1/8 of 253 pounds. He's got 34.5-inch arms and an 82-inch wingspan. He ran a 4.61 at that size with a 1.62 10-yard split. In my notes, high cut, tall with huge wingspan, arms, long legs, but kind of smallish hands. I mean, small relative to the rest of him, right? He's thin everywhere except for his thighs. Like he's just for being a tall guy and kind of framed large, he's not filled out really, except for his thighs. This is very much a toolsy prospect, and so the tools are very impressive. That's very clear to see. But the background here is he was 3 years as kind of a non-notable wide receiver at Oklahoma State before transferring to UVA and then transferring to tight end as well. He's definitely got the kind of seam buster skills. He can really move well vertically and curvilinearly. I can never say the word.
I like that one.
The way they kind of slaloms, that sort of movement. He's not necessarily a change of direction guy, right? He's not going to get into.
I don't think he's a yards after catch type of guy, right? I think he's catch, fall down, and maybe run somebody over, but he's not going to elude tackles in the open field.
No, I think he's a guy who can get to a spot quickly and present a big target, right? Yeah. And like whether that's up the seam, whether that's in the middle, that's fine. And then I think once he gets it, if he gets the ball in his hands and he's moving, I think he can really run. And like I said, he can kind of slalom in and out of breaks without losing speed, but he's not going to stop on a dime and change direction. He's not going to, make a safety fall down with his in and out breaks, that sort of thing. He's not developed at all as a blocker, but he's incredibly willing and he's a very physical player. So there's a lot to like there. So this is not going to be an issue where you're trying to get physicality out of a big man. This is a big man who is physical, who just doesn't know what he's doing really. Like I mentioned, not agile. And I think that a lot of that has to do with he has very long legs, like we mentioned. I think he's going to struggle to block targets in space, and he's not, like I said, explosive inside and outside. I think part of the issue is that he needs to become more flexible in his lower body, his ankles, his hips, his knees. Like I think that would help kind of play with a little bit lower pad level. Where does he win? Just flying up the field, being a huge, fast target as a wide receiver, developmental tight end who could be, I think, eventually his high end ceiling could be a complete tight end. Just because he has the kind of physicality that's involved. If he can learn how to block and get some more flexibility, he could be really helpful. Unanswered questions. What's the plan with this guy? Because he does need some development. I think you can use him while he is developing. But I think early on, you're going to need a very specific plan for him because he's not exactly a tight end too, because you don't really trust him as a blocker necessarily. You really would like to kind of get him specific targets and work him as a specific target in the pass game.
I agree. His receiving ability reminds me a lot of like early career Martellus Bennett with the Cowboys, right? Which somebody that's big and pretty straight line. And if you have a little safety that tries to take him on, like in the shoulder pads, he's going to run him over, right? Yeah. Now, the difference is, and this is the reason why Bennett was a second-round pick and Woods isn't going to probably be a second-round pick, is the blocking, right? Bennett, I kind of thought Bennett, like, it legitimately could have put on 30 pounds and been a left tackle.
Bennett buried people. Yeah, absolutely. If anything, Bennett's issue was a receiving issue coming into college. Right. NFL, not blocking at all.
Not blocking. But that's the type of receiver I see. He's still a really interesting prospect because you just don't get guys that are that big and that fast all that often. So where would you feel comfortable drafting Woods for the Cowboys?
Well, I was just going to add in, the one thing, like kind of going back to my overall thesis about tight ends, is you got to build 95% of these guys from the ground up. If you're doing that, why wouldn't you take somebody like Jelani Woods? Like, right? Because he has the accoutrement of a very good tight end. All the pieces are there. You just need to assemble it and give him some time to develop. So, I mean, I think he's not experienced. So that kind of, and like I said, the usage early on could be a problem, or you just have to be very specific. It's not necessarily a problem, but I would say third round.
That's kind of like where Dallas picks in the third round, which is in the 80s, right? That's where I start feeling, okay, this is worth a shot here. I just don't know this is the type of tight end the Cowboys are looking for. Just kind of looking back at some of their other guys that they've drafted or signed, I think they're looking for the guys that are a little bit more, I don't know, quick in and out of their breaks, right? That can do some of the play action and some of the bootleg stuff, like that can kind of fly to the flats and then get upfield quickly. It's not that I don't think Woods can do that, but I don't know if he has like the hips that a Dalton Schultz has, or even a Sean McEwen. I almost wonder if they're looking for more of that style of tight end rather than a big seam stretcher.
Yeah, like I do think that a lot of his athleticism seems to be linear. I mean, we talked about that, and so obviously getting up the field quickly, and that's going to be his deal, like coming out of his breaks. But if he's standing on the sideline and you throw him the ball and he's got to turn and then get upfield,
that's where I worry about him a little bit.
When you watch Dalton Schultz do that, like it's shocking how quickly he's able to get the ball and then get upfield quickly. Like
I noticed it the most
this guy at all, right?
I noticed that more for Schultz on the bootleg stuff, right? He catches a pass going to the flat, and all of a sudden up the field, and a 3-yard pass turned into 9 yards.
Yep.
I don't know if that's Woods' game. I think you can use him differently, and maybe that's why the Cowboys are interested. If you have somebody like Dalton Schultz,
very likely,
you don't need another guy like that.
Yeah, that could be it as well. I mean, it could be that this guy is being viewed as a compliment. Because you do kind of have a tight end room that has several similar-ish pieces and then a blocking tight end, right? So maybe this guy is kind of just an alternate to that. And the idea is you want to build your pass catcher room, wide receivers and tight ends, like a basketball team. You want to have a different set of sets. Well, no, not like modern NBA basketball, but like old school NBA basketball.
I agree. What's still a really interesting prospect. My guess is he goes sometime on day 2. Maybe to the Cowboys. We'll see. All right, let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about Bet Online. After months of playing, college basketball determined the top teams for the Final Four, and it will determine this year's national championship later this week. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. From all of the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it, they have it. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's talk about Iowa State tight end Charlie Kolar, who the Cowboys saw at the Senior Bowl, who they went to their pro day to work out, and I believe he's going to be a 30 visit for them. Charlie Kolar, what do you think?
I really like Charlie Kolar. He's a very similar kind of player. I think if we're talking about, Jelani Woods and Kolar. I mean, I don't know that he has exactly the same kind of athleticism, but another kind of tall, big body tight end. He's got big hands, long, thin arms. Mm-hmm. He has like a very interesting stance. Did you notice that when he was detached? Like his feet are split very vertically, and he's like fully leaning over his front knee, like in a way that's, you see some wide receivers, but not so many tight ends line up. He clearly, from the games I watched, he was clearly the guy that ISU was looking to get the ball to. They really were trying to get him the ball in a lot of different ways. It looks like he had a lot of targets. He's very fluid mover. He gets in and out of his breaks very well. Especially for a taller tight end. I think that's the thing that's really separates him from Jelani Woods. I think he's good after the catch. I think his change of direction skills combined with his size make him tough to bring down alone. I saw several times where he was running one direction catches the ball and is able to drop his hips and then turn back the other way. And the defender had an arm on him several different times where the defender had an arm on him, but he breaks those arm tackles because he's changing directions too quick and he's just too big and strong and they can't hold on. And I think he's going to be able to continue that kind of level of success doing that in the NFL. I think he's going to be really good making a living in kind of some of these stop routes and some of that sort of thing. He needs to be more. I put more in this. He needs to be more subtle, he needs more subtle in his subtle push off, right?
Yes,
because it's not very subtle right now.
It's two-arm
just
shove a lot of times, right?
Yeah. So he needs to just kind of work on being, getting into the body of the defender a little bit more, hiding his hand from the referee, and then pushing off and then making separation. Not a physical blocker.
Nope.
Just really not a physical player at all. I just didn't see that with him the way I did with Jelani Woods. I think this is a guy that is a pass receiving tight end, right? He will make he will make his living on these kind of stop routes where you think he's going one way and he stops suddenly, or getting in and out of breaks, or option routes. I think he will be eventually really good in option route situations. Where does he win? He's a big target pass catcher. I mean, like I said, not quite the same size as Woods, but very similar size. He's going to present a very large target for anybody that's trying to look for somebody in the middle of the field. Unanswered questions I got: are you going to get anything out of him as a blocker? And if not, is his value as a receiver make it worth the trouble for him? Because hiding him as a blocker is going to be problematic since he's a tight end.
Do you think it's more of a strength issue or a technique issue?
I think it's both, and I think that means that it's a willingness issue, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't think he's I don't think he's afraid of it, but he doesn't. When I saw him blocking, I didn't see a guy who was relishing it.
He's a get in the way blocker.
Yeah, exactly, and that's fine. But I also think that I don't even know that he's enough of a get in the way blocker that he's like valued, or I would put him on the field in a situation where he's run blocking, unless he was on the backside. I knew he couldn't ruin it,
I don't think if you go a jumbo set, right, 3 tight ends on the field and you line them up right next to the tackle, that's his best spot. Like at that point, you're better off just putting another offensive lineman on the field, right? I mean, you just are. His value is going to be playing him in the slot, or playing him out wide, or using him in the red zone. I do like a lot of his receiving stuff. He's just so big. Yeah. And his wingspan is massive, and he's athletic. Like I don't want to say sneaky athletic because that's not really fair, because he's a really good athlete. But when you see somebody that big, I don't think you're expecting him to look that athletic.
Who does his game remind you of?
I don't want to say Jason Witten.
I think that's why I've asked you, Marcus. He's basically a Jason Witten starter kit. Yeah, I think he's not nearly as a physical player as Jason Witten, and I don't think he has the physical attitude that Jason Witten has. No. And I don't think he'll ever be a blocker like Jason Witten is. But I think as far as what his receiving game is, he's a guy who gets off the line quickly. He's the guy who can create quick separation and then use his body to block out defenders in order to secure a quick catch. I think that has value. I think the question becomes, how much value does it have to you, and does it have enough value to you that you're willing to overlook the fact that he's not going to provide very much for you as a blocker? And he doesn't. I mean, part of what makes tight end valuable is that when they're on the field, it doesn't belie your plan on that snap, right? It doesn't reveal what you're going to do. The defense is still not sure if it's run or pass right up to the point of the snap. I think with this guy in the field, you feel a little bit more certain that they're likely to be throwing the football to him as opposed to running behind him.
I like him though, so I think his game reminds me a lot of Cole Kmet a couple years ago, coming out of Notre Dame, kind of that big athletic tight end that's just not a blocker right now. And maybe 2-3 years down the road, he can be adequate. And if he's adequate as a blocker, I think he's going to be a really valuable player, because you just don't find guys that are that big and frankly that productive. 3 straight years of over 550 receiving yards at Iowa State's very impressive. Most tight ends that are coming into the draft don't have seasons like he did last year, where He had 780 yards or something like that, and a force in the red zone. I think, man, let me ask you this. You tell me, where do you think he should be drafted?
I wouldn't be surprised if he was drafted similar to where Jelani's drafted. I think because his
You're saying
skill
third,
set,
fourth round?
yeah, fourth round probably.
So
Yeah,
you're a little bit low. I would take him in the third. You would take him in the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it at the end, but it's to me like we should have done these the order of these guys with Charlie first, Jelani second, and then the next guy last, because that way you've got either end of the spectrum on them, and Jelani's the guy that's somewhere kind of close in the middle, between receiving and blocking and that sort of thing. So, but actually not. I mean, we'll get into the other dude, but
I think I just like Kolar a little bit more than you. I think his receiving upside will allow me to live with how average of a blocker he is at best.
I think that, yeah, I do think he has value as a receiver. Like, and that certainly is notable. I like him a lot. Like, I certainly wouldn't be upset with the Cowboys if they took him, but I wonder if honestly, the Cowboys are one of the few teams I think that could really get the most out of this guy. So maybe I do understand him.
Okay, let's just talk about him specifically for the Cowboys. In year one, you're probably not using him as the second blocker, right? That's probably when you're using Jeremy Sprinkle or you're using maybe more Sean McEwen. But if you want somebody that can help you get some more receiving stuff, or let's say Dalton Schultz is injured, Kolar's a better receiving option than either McEwen or Sprinkle. And he's the guy that you could use out of the slot and do different stuff. So I think for Dallas, it makes a ton of sense, especially with you already having Schultz on the roster.
Yeah, and it kind of going back to the thing, we shouldn't give Jelani Woods credit for something that we're not giving Kolar credit for. I think that Kolar would provide a change in skill set a little bit, even though he's a receiving tight end. I think he's much more of a guy who can operate well in short areas and in the middle, because he can separate quickly and he can get open quickly.
He's so big.
Yeah. I think he has value, and I think he provides an alternate skill set than receiving skill set than what you have in some of the other guys on this team. So I do think, I mean, like I said, I like the guy a lot. I just think that the blocking is a problem, and it's just something that's probably going to bring him down a little bit.
It's a problem for a lot of young tight ends, and it's not an uncommon thing. Most tight ends come in the NFL not being able to block. If they have the want to and they have the requisite athleticism, I think you can teach that, but you have to be patient. It's not going to happen in year one. All right, let's talk about our final tight end, Texas A&M, Jalen Wydermeyer. This is a really fascinating tight end because Landon, 6 weeks ago, and I actually saved the tweet. I'll send it to you after this show, but there were Cowboys media people that believed he was an option for them at pick number 24, and that Wydermeyer should be the first tight end off the board and a first-round player. And if you go back and look at mock drafts at this time last year, he was routinely mocked inside of the top 15. And now he might not get drafted. But let me allow you to give the overview of Jalen Wydermyer.
I mean, this is another really big dude, like 6'4", 255, and bigger than actually these other guys in the sense that he's, I think, a little bit squattier, a little bit, fuller. This is the guy that when you look at him, like, oh man, this could be an excellent tight end too, who could develop into a really, really, nice, well-rounded tight end. That's just not his game at all. Like, he's not athletic. So after watching him, it became very clear that his game is that he's a receiving tight end.
He is
right?
a receiving tight end.
That he's not like a balanced or versatile player. He's mostly receiving tight end, and he's not athletic. Like, he looks like he moves well on the field. He definitely, is producing at a high level.
He's smooth, but he's not an athlete, right?
Yeah. And so I think he's deceivingly smooth. And I think that, gets him some distance, at different points, because I think people misjudge what he's going to be able to do. But I think my big issue with this guy is that I don't really know like how you match what he does well with his physical skill set. I think the benefit of drafting a guy like this is that he would be a two-way player, right? That he would be a good run and pass player.
Because he's
The
got the
fact
body to do that.
because he's got the body for it. If he doesn't have the run blocking skills, then it's not helpful to be 255 pounds and slow. Like that's not, if you're just a receiving tight end, being bigger and slower is not a valued upside. So to me, his game doesn't match his athletic ability very well. And I think that's not so much of a problem in college because, if your skill set is to a certain level, you can perform. And I understand this all happened in the SEC, but I think when he gets to the NFL, the athleticism becomes even more pronounced. It becomes a more pronounced problem. He's not going to be able to move defensive ends or function as a true, blocking tight end. So ultimately, what are you doing with this guy early? Like, I just like, I'm not trying to like design specific plays for a guy who runs a 4.9, 5 flat 40 to catch the ball. And you know what I'm saying? Like, so unless he's a blocker who is a good outlet guy, who is, getting the fifth deep linebacker, assigned to him, then what is the value of having him on the field?
He looks like he should be Jeremy Sprinkle, like as a blocker, right? Like that's what his size is, but he's not. And he's just as bad of an athlete, if not worse, right? The problem here is he's got a lot of things going against him. Number one, as we mentioned, he's just a bad blocker. And I think what's even worse is I don't think he has any desire to block. I just don't think
and as bad as Kolar, I thought wasn't physical. I think, I think Kolar could probably be taught and willing. I mean, this guy is even less willing, it seems.
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to block at all, which is ridiculous.
So that's again, I can live with that if you are a dominant receiver because we've seen guys like Jimmy Graham, who is a horrendous blocker, have a great career. He's not Jimmy Graham as an athlete. He's not Jimmy Graham as a receiver. Last year alone, Landon, he had a 17% drop rate on his targets. 17%. That's
what are we
8
doing
drops.
Here with this? I guess my thing is like, why are we talking about this guy? I mean, again, I came into this process late, so I'm assuming that like there's some junior tape somewhere that looks a lot better than what's going on with the senior tape. Obviously, I know for a fact that he came into the season as like I'm pretty sure I saw him in like top 15 on mock drafts, like early on in this really, really early on, but still, right? I don't get this at all. Like, I honestly, when I watched this guy, I was shocked. I had to check twice to make sure that I was watching the right guy.
Because here's what it is. Of his 3 or 4 best games in his career, 2 of them came against Alabama. Right.
There you go.
So when you watch him score a touchdown against Alabama, a long touchdown, and you see him in another game catch 8 passes for 80 yards in a game that I'm trying to remember if they beat Alabama or they did. They beat Alabama. Yeah, they beat Alabama this year.
Yeah.
You see him do that, and you see him be a big recruit. That automatically people just say first round tight end.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Was he a 5-star recruit or something?
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing that makes sense, right? Like he was
a 4-star recruit, but he was the number 1 tight end prospect in his class. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, that makes sense that someone has just carried water for this guy throughout his college career, but I don't see a draftable player. Like,
he's just
like,
not an NFL athlete, right? I mean, he's not even 6'4", so he looks like he should be bigger. He was listed at 6'6", 255. He's a hair under 6'4", and he's a 1 percentile athlete. Sorry, those just aren't NFL players, or at least those aren't guys that you spend draft picks on. And I know the Cowboys have a 30 visit for him, and I gotta believe it's more just to bring him in and be like, "What happened? How are you this great recruit?"
Is everybody else missing something? Is that what it is? Like,
totally. If we sign you as a UDFA, what are you going to do here? I would be shocked if this is somebody that goes in the first 4 rounds of the draft. I would be shocked.
I would be too. It would be a mistake, in my opinion. Like, he's just like, again, it's just such a mismatch of what his football on-field skills are and the his body of athleticism, they don't match up in the NFL. That's just not going to work, man. Like, especially in a position where, again, the value of tight end is that they're a two-way player, at least somewhat of a two-way player, right? Like,
give you the illusion that they can be a two-way player to the defense, right?
Otherwise, why wouldn't I just put a wide receiver on the field?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't I just put a big wide receiver on the field? Or how about this? If I'm dealing with a tight end that can't block, why not put a 6'3", 245-pound tight end who could really, really run on the field instead of some slow guy who's also big? Like, it's like there's no value in being 6'4", 255 as a tight end if you're only a receiving tight end and you suck at blocking. There's just no value. So I don't get it with this guy at all, to be honest.
All right. So of these three tight ends that we watched, which one do you like the best for the Cowboys?
Wydermeyer for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Wasn't expecting that.
I think I like Kolar a lot. I think probably Woods, though.
Okay.
You know, I mean, just because I really do think that you could get something out of this guy.
Something just different there, right?
Yeah, he's just raw. Like, he just looks very raw, and he needs, I think with Kolar, he's been playing the position for a long time. You know what he is. I think the floor is a lot higher with Kolar. Even though he's not a full-time blocker, I think, what you're getting there.
I agree.
With Woods, you could be getting what Kolar is, or you could be getting a true two-way tight end eventually down the road who really, like, with that athleticism, I mean, the upside is all pro, right? Like, if he really learned it, like, he could be one of the best tight ends in the league with that kind of athletic ability.
I probably would go Kolar because if you are drafting a tight end in the third or fourth round, I kind of like that, having a high floor. But I get it. I think we're gonna have to do another show on tight ends because we touched on three guys that the Cowboys like. I know of at least three others that they've met with or went to see at their pro day or are going to have at 30 visits. It's pretty clear the Cowboys are going to take a tight end at some point in this draft. Which one? I don't know. That's what we're going to have to try to study and figure this out over the next 4 weeks. Draft 4 weeks from today.
Oh my God!
Crazy.
Right?
Coming fast. But that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can get your podcast wherever you get your podcast. Because Locked On Cowboys on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You're going to be seeing some more content from the Locked On Cowboys account. So make sure you guys follow that. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.